Okay, our live stream has begun. Aaron, if you start recording, please. Ready? Take it away, please.
All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening to the Tivoli Community Dialogue session. My name is Freddie Garcia, and I'm working with my colleague Bailey Williams, and we're from the Dutchess County Commission on Human Rights, and we're serving today as moderators to the discussion. Before we move forward, I just have to read the following. This is an official meeting of the Village of Tivoli Board of Trustees, and as such is required under the Open Meetings Law during COVID to be live streamed and recorded. This is currently being recorded, streamed on YouTube, and a transcription will be produced. So I got to get that out the way before we get to everything else. So again, welcome everybody for joining us this evening. Before I begin with the program, I want to emphasize that today's purpose is for the community to share feedback and comments around what the mayor and the trustees will present in a few minutes based off of the listening session that took place earlier this summer. They've spent a couple of months kind of replaying the listening session and really trying to figure out the best way they can be effective and efficient in supporting the community. At certain moments in the presentation, I will be sharing some slides to help kind of keep us on task. So as you can see here, today's Tivoli Community Dialogue session. And let me just go to the next slide here. And this is what our agenda for today looks like. So obviously I've mentioned introductions between myself and Bailey, who will be moderating today's discussions. The ground rules we'll revisit a little after the presentation. And then we'll go into the feedback sections of the different items that the mayor and the trustees have put together for all you to give feedback. We'll obviously open it up for more comments and questions at the end, and then end hopefully right at 9 o'clock. So with that, Mayor Griffith, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Freddie. Over the next several minutes, the Board of Trustees will recap this summer's conversations, explain our process that we went through this summer, propose what the board has created in response to what we heard, and explain why these are our responses, and then solicit your feedback on these proposals. So I begin with our process this summer. At the listening forum in June, we on the Board of Trustees heard the concerns of those who participated. We take those concerns very seriously. We serve to represent the citizens of this community and to advocate for everyone in this community. In the 2 months since, we have actively engaged in a rigorous process of follow-up, which has included the following: one-on-one conversations with residents in our community, many of you who contacted us directly to voice your concerns, many of you who spoke at the first forum and wanted follow-up with in-person dialogue. Contacting law enforcement agencies, as well as local and county officials to ask questions, to seek answers, and discuss possible solutions. Compiling and disseminating a comprehensive document that covers a wide range of topics, including how village government works, information about police in the village, the noise law, and police reform initiatives in New York State. Also, our process has included meeting as a board on multiple occasions and special sessions to deliberate potential solutions to make sure that the village is a safe and welcoming place for all Tivolians. So today we will present where we are in this process thus far and propose some ideas we'd like you to consider this evening. Trustee Ezrati?
Yes, at the listening forum, we heard experiences with and concerns about law enforcement in the village of Tivoli. We heard allegations of racial profiling, accounts of being followed or otherwise being singled out by police on the basis of race. To be perfectly clear, we as your elected representatives take seriously our role to secure the safety and well-being of every resident. No one should feel threatened or unsafe in the place they call home, whether that home is for a lifetime, a week, or a few months for this community that anyone is treated differently by law enforcement because of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or age is unacceptable. As you saw in the follow-up document to the listening forum, the Village of Tivoli contracts with the Dutchess County Sheriff's Department. Other law enforcement entities may be present in the village in the case of a 911 emergency call. In response to a 911 call, all law enforcement agencies in the area will make their way to the scene. Additionally, the Dutchess County Sheriff's Department and New York State troopers may be present in the village as they patrol the county and state respectively. We certainly hope that all residents respect the laws of the village that are intended to keep us safe. However, there are real and serious occurrences in which that is not the case. For context, in the past year in our village, we have experienced the sale and use of illegal drugs, theft, vandalism, gun violence, incidents of potential hate crimes, speeding through our residential neighborhoods and business district, and domestic violence. While these may not be frequent occurrences, when they do occur, we have heard from residents who want to know they can call law enforcement to protect their safety and well-being. Therefore, due to the real issues we sometimes face, we do not believe the elimination of police in the Village of Tivoli is prudent or feasible. However, we are actively participating in county and state initiatives for police reform to make certain that when law enforcement officers do respond to a call, they do so professionally and without bias. Proposing the creation of an incident form so anyone who has an encounter with law enforcement they feel is not professional and respectful can document the occurrence for further investigation.
I think we need to unmute the deputy mayor. Oh, sorry, excuse me. I missed my cue.
Yes.
So first, I'm going to tell you about the Dutchess County Police Reform and Modernization Plan. In June, Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203, which sorry, was there something? Governor Cuomo issued Executive Order 203, which mandates that local municipalities with police agencies develop a new law enforcement plan that will include reforms, policies, and procedures necessary to eliminate racial inequities in policing, to modify and modernize policing strategies, policies, procedures, and practices, and to develop practices to better address the particular needs of communities of color to promote safety, improve community engagement, and foster trust. While Tivoli does not have a police department and is not directly mandated by Order 203, the village board will be engaging in the process as it unfolds at the county level. We urge Tivolians, everyone, to join us in this engagement. The village-wide email I sent out on September 3rd put forth the information residents need to participate. For Tivoli, the date of greatest importance will be Saturday, September 26th, 3 to 5 p.m. This is one of, I believe, 5 or 6 regional big Zoom calls, and there's one for our region, which is Tivoli, Milan, Red Hook, Rhinebeck. So that's our window. And I encourage you all to participate and take this opportunity for public comment. Please note, as I said in that email, you must register to participate on the 26th. There is also created by Dutchess County a police reform and modernization collaborative website where you will find all the information about the process and a public comment form for those who would like to submit written testimony and ideas. So you will not be limited to that Zoom call. You can submit things in writing as well. The Village of Tivoli is not managing this process, Dutchess County is. But our engagement and input is essential if we want accountability from the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office and if we want to see reform. If we are not satisfied with the process or the results, all of us will have a responsibility to say so, and we will reconvene as a community to make further decisions about where we as a community want to go from there. So we're going to participate in this process. We're going to do it with our eyes open. And there is an opportunity for all of us to talk about the Dutchess County Sheriffs. Thank you.
So the police encounter incident form. One of the most troubling takeaways from the listening session was that some of our residents in the community recounted negative experiences with law enforcement, which were not brought to the attention of the mayor and the board of trustees. We heard accounts of police encounters that occurred months or even longer ago. And while we believe that there are situations which merit police presence in our village, in all of those situations, police should conduct themselves with, they should conduct themselves professionally and without bias. And further, if someone in our community has an encounter with law enforcement and feels the police did not conduct themselves to these standards, we need to know, and we need to know right away. That's the only way we will be able to advocate for our residents with the deputies with whom we contract or with any other law enforcement agency. For these reasons, we propose to introduce in our community a police encounter incident form. Many communities across the nation have such a mechanism, so residents can bring an experience quickly to the attention of officials who can investigate and take action around police conduct as warranted by the complaint. Anyone in Tivoli can contact the mayor or the board of trustees by phone, by email, or in person, and bring complaints or concerns to our attention. But we feel strongly that the introduction of a specific police encounter incident form will be a useful tool for residents and for village government to help us ensure that the police who operate in the village do so fairly and professionally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to speak on the noise law. There was much discussion in the listening session of Tivoli's noise law. The law was originally passed in 1998 and amended in 2002, 2015, and 2017. The passage of the law and each subsequent amendment was accompanied by a legally required advertised public hearing in which any citizen could participate and voice their opinion on both the proposed law and or any of the changes. And many did. After the listening session, an inventory was performed of noise laws in all municipalities in Dutchess County. 28 of the 30 municipalities have similar noise laws on the books. Some begin at 7 p.m. each evening, and others, such as the noise law in Tivoli, begin at 10 p.m. So the noise law covers a wide range of noise, and that includes construction noise, landscaping and yard maintenance, parties, social gatherings, car horns, heavy equipment, etc. In other municipalities, the penalty for violating a noise ordinance is a fine of $250 per violation and or imprisonment for up to 15 days. Each incidence of a violation is considered a separate offense. Tivoli's penalties are $150 to $250 for the first offense, $300 to $1,000 for the second offense within a year of the first, and $500 to $3,000 and or imprisonment up to 15 days for a third or subsequent offense. Based on the input from the listening forum, input from many residents after the forum, an inventory of Dutchess County villages, towns, and cities, the board believes the noise law is appropriate, reasonable, and necessary to promote the quality of life for all residents.
I will share with you one of the ideas that we on the board would like to put forth. It's the proposal of forming a Tivoli Community Coalition. This summer, as we on the board continue to listen and engage in dialogue with so many members of our Tivoli community, we were again reminded of what a rich, vibrant place our village is, thanks to all who reside here. We were also reminded of the diversity within our borders, diversity of age, gender, race, ethnicity, length of time living in the village, and all sorts of perspectives. But despite this, we heard loud and clear that some residents of our village feel disconnected from the community, that among the diverse constituents just mentioned, there is a need for an active effort to promote inclusivity and a broadly held sense that everyone is welcomed and valued in Tivoli as they are. So given current national events and the need and desire for dialogue as well as outreach, we're proposing the formation of the Tivoli Community Coalition. We envision this coalition as a working group of approximately 8 to 10 individuals who represent the diversity of our village, as noted earlier. Proposed key functions of the coalition will reflect what we heard in the listening forum and throughout this summer, and may include welcome packets and visits for new residents with information about how village government works, local laws and where to go for information, direct outreach to newcomers, pending COVID-19 state and county restrictions, of course, development of citizen academy programs, which basically educate residents on topics ranging from how laws in the village are passed, the structure of village government, how the village budget is financed, and how the money is allocated. And also a place where we envision this coalition to be a place where the conversations that were begun this summer can continue into the future. Of course, as with all village committees, the members of the Tivoli Community Coalition will be appointed by the mayor with input from the Board of Trustees to reflect the richness of our community. The Tivoli Coalition will then make recommendations to the Board of Trustees.
Thank you to the village board. For everyone on the call, we believe that these ideas are worth discussing and that within them lies much that we think may improve our community. And we're very interested now to listen to your ideas on what you've just heard. So thank you very much for participating in this session this evening.
Okay, so just wanted to kind of orient us on where we are. So again, the last session was a listening session, and the mayor and the board sat there and listened. I think, for today's session, they do want feedback on the 3 proposals they have, 3 ideas they have put forward for comments, feedback, suggestions as they continue to develop and kind of bring them to fruit. Before we go there, I do want to say that we do have some ground rules as we did before. So I want to go through those very quickly. So again, we'll go through each idea one at a time. We'll spend a couple of minutes on each until we hear everyone out, and then move to the next one and the next one. So we'll go in that order. Everyone who speaks will have 3 minutes. And to speak, if you hit on the participant link on the bottom, on the chat, on the participation thing on the bottom right, you'll see a raise hand function. So just raise your hand, and my colleague Bailey will call on you when it's your turn. If you have a question for the mayor or the board, feel free to ask that as well, and it will be addressed after you finish speaking. Or if it's just one question, just ask the question. We'll mute you and kind of go from there. Please refrain from identifying individuals or specific situations in order to keep anonymity and for folks to keep safe. Again, if the question is asked to the trustee or the mayor, they will also have 3 minutes to respond as well. So we want to make sure that we move this along, and we want to hear from as many people as possible. If we get to the 3 minutes, I am not being rude, but I will interrupt, and we'll move on from there. Again, we put these together to allow for an effective and efficient process. A dialogue via Zoom isn't easy. It isn't simple, and we understand that, but we want to make sure to make it work in the circumstances that we're in. So again, thank you for being here, and I will put up the slide, and Bailey, you can start once we start seeing some hands. So we will start with the Dutchess County Police Reform and Modernization Plan. And a quick description, obviously, in terms of if anyone needs to have their memory refreshed. So any comments, thoughts, ideas, suggestions?
Okay, I see Sarah in Bowden. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hey, Sarah in Bowden, new Tivoli resident on Woods Road. My comment about this is that I wonder, as I've been looking at these notifications going out, I think it's great for Tivoli to participate. I wonder whether the sort of upper county voice would be stronger if the town and villages considered sort of some kind of a statement that was coordinated as far as like what they think what they'd like to see the sheriff's office working on specific to our area. So I just want to put that idea out there that besides all of us residents speaking with our own voices, that, you know, sometimes when we do these things with like Amtrak and other bigger bodies, it's really helpful when we speak in some kind of coordinated way. Just a thought. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarah.
So I currently have no other hands raised right now.
As host, I'm getting a comment. Some people are having trouble with the hand raising function. Maybe folks could explain that again, because
Sure. So if you go on the tab underneath, it has mute, start video, security, or participants, etc. You hit participants, you'll see the list on your right hand side. All the way on the bottom, you might see the raise hand function, or you'll see some dots. If you click the dots, you'll also be able to see the raise hand function.
Okay, I have Ken McCarthy. I'm going to unmute you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think the idea of having a complaint form so that if anybody feels they've been mistreated, they can fill it out and give it to Joel or give it to the office at the village hall. I think that's really a good thing to have something concrete. It gives Joel something that he can take in hand if there is a particular problem, and it allows it to be discussed, and that's a really, really important tool. You know, every profession, whether it's medicine, law, academia, law enforcement has people that don't do their job correctly. And it's good to have a mechanism by which, you know, they can be called out on it. And these guys are under command. They have commanders, and the commanders don't want them to be misbehaving. So this will help a lot. I think it's a great thing.
Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it. Oh. So since we didn't have any hands raised, and I think Ken, thank you for your comments. We'll go to the police encounter incident form. If there's any feedback, any thoughts for the board or the mayor to consider.
Okay, I see Danielle Del Rosario. I'm going to unmute you. Okay, Danielle, you should be unmuted, so you have the floor.
Yes, yeah. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah,
Very,
you sound low.
That better?
yes.
Okay. So I want to know a little bit more of the mechanisms of who will be receiving these incident forms, who will be looking over them, and how will they be communicated with the police? If this has already been proposed to the police, what measures they're going to take after receiving this feedback?
Thank you, Danielle. And I'll pass it over to Mayor Griffith.
Sure. Thanks for that question. I want to be clear to everyone that, this is an idea. We have not produced the form. I have looked around the nation and other communities that have them. I think those questions you just raised, Danielle, are precisely what the questions that need to be asked, because if this mechanism doesn't work, what good is it? So I have my initial thoughts about how it would come to me and the board. The mayor has the responsibility of directing law enforcement for the village. It is exclusively the responsibility of this office. So, that would allow me to, contact, as Mr. McCarthy said, the commanders higher up and bring this to the attention of the police. I have not shared the idea with them yet. We really wanted to hear first from the community as to whether they thought it was a good idea. And if so, then the next step after tonight will be to actually create this thing. What information should be on it? Talk to communities who already have such a thing, learn about what works, what doesn't. And I think that, this will take a lot of work to make something that is successful and useful. And those concerns you have, because if I call the police and hand it to them and they say, okay, yeah, thanks, and stick it in a drawer, no good. That's not going to work for us. But even so, we certainly want them to be responsive, but even the board feels very strongly that us knowing that there was a concern, regardless of what the police choose to do. I mean, Tivoli contracts with the deputies. There are other organizations out there. I mean, it's almost like we're using a vendor, and if this vendor is not working for us, we shop around. So there is some value even sort of in-house within Tivoli. As was said in our comments, it was heartbreaking that there are people who've had some of those experiences we heard on the listening session, who have been living with that for months or longer, and that the board and I, who are responsible for this stuff, may not have known of some of those incidents. That's totally not okay. So we need to find out how to capture, like, I want to know the next day if anyone in this village had a horrible experience with police. I need to know.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, next up I have Leslie Vecke. I'm gonna unmute you. Okay, you should be unmuted.
Okay, hi, this is actually Daniela Dooling. Les Levesque and I are sharing our screen. So one of the things that I see that we only have 39 people participating in this meeting, and there were a lot more people participating in the summer session, the listening session, and there were a lot more students from Bard that were participating. So I'm not sure why there aren't more students who are the ones that are, I think, really that are the ones that are really feeling the brunt of the police misconduct in Tivoli. And so I do know that an email went out to the Bard community about the September 26th event, but I'm not sure that an email went out to the Bard community about tonight's event. And so, what? And so one of the things that I guess that I would suggest is that if this police encounter incident form goes through, I share Danielle's concern about or wanting to know how that would come about. But I also would suggest that perhaps we could work a little bit with Bard. I believe that Dr. Kahan Sablo had a meeting with you Joel, and that maybe there could be some conversation between the mayor and the board of Tivoli, and perhaps someone like Dr. Sablo from Bart to try to mediate some of these things, because it really was not all just students that were bringing up some of these concerns the last time we met, but I would say it was the majority. So that's just something that I'd like to throw it out there, is that maybe somehow we work with Bard as a representative in this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Joel?
I take your comment to heart. I actually reached out to Kahan Sablo as soon as his position was announced, and we've spoken on a couple occasions already. And yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you said, Daniela.
Okay, next we have Larry Cox. I'll unmute you. So Larry, you should get a little pop-up asking if it's okay to unmute you. So you can just click that and then you should have, oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to say I wanted to just express a concern as you develop the form. I would think, and it's consistent with what we were just discussing about parts of the community that are the most vulnerable to police abuse, maybe the very parts that will be most reluctant to use such a form out of fear of confidentiality, or fear that if they had a bad incident with the police, they don't want their name then going to the police saying this person is accusing you, or this person. I mean, there'll be a lot of things to work through in terms of how people can feel confident that this isn't going to make their life worse rather than better. So I just wanted to raise that concern. I don't have an answer myself, but it's consistent with the idea of having more conversations with those who are more likely to be vulnerable to police abuse than others. So I just wanted to express that concern about, because if people are afraid to use this form, it won't be of any use to anybody.
Thank you, Larry.
Agreed.
Bill Schilling, I'll go ahead and click to unmute you.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to voice my support for the police encounter form. I think it's a great idea. Obviously, the details need to be fleshed out as far as privacy and police accountability on what they do when they get that information and how we can track that information. So I think it's a good idea. It's a great start, and let's continue the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
So I currently have no hands raised. If there's anyone else who'd like to make any comment or ask a question about the incident form, we'll give it another moment. And then we'll also have a period at the very end for general questions. So if there's something that comes to you after we move on to the next point, we'll have time to bring it up then as well. We'll give it another moment. If there's anyone else who wants to raise their hand to comment. Okay, let's move on to the next topic. Freddie.
All right, so we're to the last one, which is the Tivoli Community Coalition. So again, a brief description there in terms of what the mayor and the trustees are thinking, and we'll take comments and questions.
Okay, Danielle Ryu, I'm going to, oh, nope. Yes, all right. Danielle Ryu, I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, thanks for organizing this, everyone. Thanks to Mayor Joel and the Board of Trustees and the Human Rights Commission of the Dutchess County. So on this point, I wanted to mention in the first listening session, there was an idea that was floated that to me might play a role here in the Tivoli Community Coalition, but I don't see it explicitly written, so maybe we can talk about it. So the student who spoke up in that listening session and gave accounts of their experiences with police as a result of noise ordinance violations, generally speaking, all expressed some concern about the way in which the village residents basically like pick up the phone and call the police when there's too much noise. And we talked a little bit about the possibility of creating an alternative kind of, I don't know, hotline or some kind of community-driven response to the noise ordinance question. And so now, I mean, given that we know that the noise ordinance is not going anywhere, or won't be repealed in a way that had also been brought up in the first meeting, I would like to voice my support for and to volunteer to help organize something like a community response so that if village residents feel the need to call to not call the police, but to rather call this community group if they have a noise complaint, and so that we can maybe try to minimize also the presence of the police and those encounters in the village to the extent possible. And that, of course, would need to involve, I think, students who are living in Tivoli and, older people like me or other people in the village to make that a functional kind of like volunteer group, basically, who's willing to pick up the phone at midnight on a Friday and say like, okay, Mr. So-and-so will go and tell them to turn the music down. Something like that, which maybe that is going to play a role in the Tivoli Community Coalition, or there, I just want to get that idea back out into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. Mayor, trustees, any comments?
Trustee Cole, do you want to speak to that at all?
Sure, I would be happy to. So Danielle, thank you for bringing that up. And that's something that we on the board, we certainly heard at the first listening forum, that people had talked about this sort of volunteer idea. We discussed this in great detail among the board, and we did research and looked at other communities who have something similar. One of the challenges with having a volunteer group to respond to, for instance, noise violations, one of the challenges we found in other municipalities that are doing that, they typically have an alternative to the police that involves some sort of trained mental health professional, be it a social worker, psychologist, who can be called in those situations. Obviously, we, as Joel mentioned, and as we all know, Tivoli doesn't have a police force. We don't have any sort of trained professionals on staff at the village. So there were concerns certainly about potential safety issues for volunteers who might be well-meaning and going into a situation where there could be anything from alcohol involved or drug use involved, and the situation could potentially escalate. But that being said, in our discussions, all of the board, we felt strongly that part of the Tivoli Community Coalition is bringing all the stakeholders in the village together, right? So no matter how long you've been in the village, if you're here for a semester, a few months, or as we've said, if you've lived here for a lifetime or several years, part of the function of that coalition and bringing all of the stakeholders together, these 8 or 10 people, would be to go out in the community. And one of the key functions will be communication. So educating newcomers and saying these are our laws. And one of those laws would be to let them know we have a noise ordinance. It begins at 10 o'clock at night, and it is a law. And so encouraging people to be aware of it and to not violate it, so that there would not be a need to have any sort of intervention involved. So that level of communication is baked into what we're proposing this idea of the Tivoli Community Coalition to be. That would be one aspect of that.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, you know, there's nothing to stop neighbors from being neighbors with each other and building relationships and exchanging phone numbers and, you know, learning how to cohabitate in tiny Tivoli. There are, and Trustee Cole is correct, we discussed this deeply and at length. There are a host of issues with something like that being officially sanctioned as like a village thing. I mean, if some well-meaning volunteer went across the street at night to a house and something happened and that was part of like something that we had put our stamp on, that could open the village up to liability and some other issues with safety and training and whatnot. So that's another reason it's a little complicated for us. But there's nothing to stop neighbors from being neighbors. So.
And that's true. And we're certainly hoping. Can you hear me?
No, yeah. We do have some hands up raised, and I just want to make sure that we get to those. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Angela. Appreciate it. All right. Bailey, you're on mute.
Had to unmute myself. John Kokorin, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I also want to thank everyone involved in putting this together. And I think Danielle Ryu really spoke very well to my own thoughts about this. And in hearing the responses, and there's a couple of things that come to mind. One is that, yes, we can go around and tell people there is a noise ordinance and it's a law. And if you're found in violation, you can be fined. But we could also say to our neighbors, we could appeal to their general humanity by saying, you know, look, you're living in a village with other people and people who go to bed early, and you know, we'd like you to think about when you have a party, think about your neighbors. And I think that you know, the idea of certainly if you're bothered by noise at night, before you call the police, I would hope that we would put it out to our residents to, you know, try to deal with it first, you know, at neighbor to neighbor, as Joel said, and I appreciate that, rather than, you know, calling the police. I mean, the police, as we know, they're human beings, and they show up with, you know, their handcuffs and their clubs and their guns and their uniforms, and that's very different from, you know, going over and saying, hey, you know, I can't sleep, could you turn it down? And I think we really have to watch out for what could happen here. I mean, I think we think, well, what happened in, you know, Minneapolis won't happen here, but it could happen here. And I think we need to try to address this as much as possible from in a community way. We try to encourage our residents to to deal with this as neighbor to neighbor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, next I'll go ahead and unmute Eileen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So a couple things. One, I wanted to just back up Angela. Years ago, I did actually go, I live next to the park on Memorial, for anyone who doesn't know that. And I would go over to the park to ask people to leave the park at midnight and so forth, who are hooting and hollering and playing basketball and so forth. And the police, actually, the sheriff's department asked me not to do that because they said that there could be repercussions. So I'll just throw that out there. They actually said, just call us, let us handle it. But my original comment was that as far as educating the residents on the topics about the village laws and so forth, is this committee or community coalition, are they going to figure out like who are the new residents? Like I know Gary DeMoro's office hands out an entire information sheet to everybody who rents through Gary. But you know, there's landlords all over the village. I mean, so is that part of the community coalition's focus going to be to find out who is the new person and to give them information on this? And then the third thing is that, you know, living next to the park, I have more than just neighbors. I actually can say that my long-term neighbors have never had any issues with, but there is a Bart rental home across from mine, and that is where 100% of the issues have come from. And I have gone over and spoken to them directly, right? And right, neighbor to neighbor, I know who they are, they know who I am. And it really gets down to who's living there that year. So it's a hit or miss. It gets down to personalities, in my opinion. But like last night, they're skateboarding on the basketball court up until 10. And then I'm thinking, okay, they're walking away. I'm okay. Well, then they just went to the skateboard thing and they're doing that for another hour. So, you know, do I really want to get dressed and go back out there and ask them to leave when I'm already gone to bed? I mean, I would say it's a pretty, you know, 50% of the time occurrence thing, given the time of the year. So the idea of calling Danielle, you know, is like on one hand appealing, you know, call you and let you deal with it. But the other thing, there is the safety, and do you really want to get called that often? That's it.
Thank you, Eileen.
Okay, Ken, I'm going to unmute you. Ken McCarthy.
Ken, you got hit the prompt, yep.
This is for students who see this in a recording, and I hope some do see it. The noise was I mean, it is a problem sometimes, and it was a huge problem in the village for many, many years. And as somebody pointed out, you know, there are a lot of people that live here, and some people have small kids, some people have to get up for work, and some people just, you know, they don't want to hear noise late at night. That's why they live in Tivoli. So 10 o'clock's not great, but it's not the worst in the area. It's, you know, it's not bad, you know, and it is the law. So an education process, I think, is really important for the students, and maybe Bart could take a role in that too. I mean, there is orientation of students, and they should be made aware that Tivoli and Red Hook are not college towns. The fact that college students live in these towns is a fact, but college town, you know, they've got their bar district and their place where they can go wild. We don't have that in Tivoli. We're a village. We're not a town, first of all. So we're not truly a college town. And I think that would be a good thing for students to be aware of. This is a village, not a town. And you got a lot of people that you have to live peacefully with. One thing that came up on the call last week is students were asking questions about, you know, can police come into their homes? Can police go, you know, in the backyard and come through the back door? And I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not posing as one, But what I understand, everybody should check their own knowledge, is no, they really can't. If they have a search warrant or an arrest warrant, yeah, you better let them in. If it's a noise complaint, turn the noise off, close your door, and have a polite conversation with them on your porch or lawn. There's no reason on earth for them to be in their house. And Bart, we talk about human rights, but there's just plain old vanilla legal rights that everybody has. And there are some police officers that push it. I see, and I'll just put this out there, I see a lot of cars stopped, and I see cops turning over kids, always kids' cars. And they need to be educated that they don't have to say yes to a search of their car. They don't have to say yes to entry to their home unless there's a warrant. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay.
Amy, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi. First of all, I always thank you all, the trustees, the mayor and the deputy mayor for having this conversation. I'm just trying to understand, and I'm a little late to the meeting, I apologize. But as I'm seeing, there is some dialogue back and forth tonight, so you're answering some questions possibly. I'm trying to understand the use of the word coalition with what you're building here. Because what I'm seeing is really a push out from the government of the village, pushing out through members of the community, and you're calling that a coalition, which to me is not really what a coalition is. It's both sides coming together to meet a collective end. So I'm not seeing that as much, and I think you want to do that, but I'm not seeing that reflected here. So maybe if you could address that, because I will say I would like to talk to you. We can do it offline, but I have a lot of experience putting task forces together, cross-functional teams. I think you need representation here from different stakeholders and really create a dialogue. And it's not just the key functions of the coalition, but what are the goals of the coalition? What do you want to accomplish? And then the functions of the coalition should serve to meet those goals. So I'm kind of missing that. And maybe that was earlier in the night. So I apologize if that's been answered.
Amy.
Trustee Cole?
Sure. Amy, thank you. And I'm glad you were able to join tonight. Actually, that was something that we did address a little bit earlier. And again, this is a proposal, an idea that has come from the board. And we definitely want input and feedback as we flesh out and develop these ideas if there's something that the community thinks are relevant and wants to do. So one of the goals of having a coalition, and we struggled with the terminology around it, whether it would be a task force or a coalition, but we want to bring together all key stakeholders in the village. That is something that we feel strongly about. Stakeholders, if you are new to the village, if you've lived in the village for a number of years, diversity of ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, bring all kinds of people together, age, and then have that coalition or task force, whatever terminology, actually work together to identify what they want the goals to be and what the function should be. One of the key issues that we felt strongly about was that we do need to make, we heard clearly in that listening session in June, that there are people in Tivoli, there are members of our community who feel disenfranchised from the community, and they don't feel that they're part of the village. And this is an earnest attempt, and we're very sincere about it and feel strongly. We don't want any particular group or anyone to feel disenfranchised. So we want to bring the stakeholders together to come up with a solution where we can reach all members of our community. And certainly reaching out would be a part of the function of the coalition or task force, whatever we call it, to basically welcome newcomers, make them feel welcome, let them know, you're a part of a village now, and everyone is welcome. And so that is the genesis of the idea of having this group of various stakeholders in the village.
And I would just add to that, one of the stakeholders are our student residents. They are Tivolians who happen to also be students at this stage of life. And we want them on this coalition as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's great, but I think the other thing is when you talk about stakeholders, that's not just new residents and longtime residents. There are other stakeholders who also could potentially be brought to the table to help solve some of these issues. And that is Bart itself. It is a representative from the police force. And it then becomes a forum in which you're getting all the information together in one place and having the discussion there to work through it, as opposed to, residents discussing what the issues are and not really having the forum in which to take them to the police and say, okay, these are our issues. Do you hear us? Now, what is your response to that? Or Bard. I mean, these are major stakeholders where there's clearly an issue. And if we're brought together in a collaborative forum to work through, they have jurisdiction and issues that they need to perform their duties. And so, and then at the same time for the members of the community to say, hey, I don't like when you do X because it makes me feel violated. And for the police to actually hear that face to face. I think what's happening is we have this mediation and we're not dealing with the issues directly with the stakeholders.
Thank you for your input. Appreciate it.
Danny Slavinsky, I'm going to unmute you.
Are you?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm using my friend's computer right now. I am a Bard student. Just to address something that was brought up earlier, I don't think a lot of Bard students knew about this since the last email was sent on Monday. Also, relating back to what Amy and I guess Eileen kind of talked about regarding the coalition, I think it's a great idea. I've actually talked to Bard students about this before and had extensive conversations. And I know a lot of people that would be super willing and interested in forming these ties between Bard people and residents, long-term residents, and are very willing to volunteer and be part of this coalition. I also feel like there's no point in not trying. I know it might seem like something that's hard to reach or difficult to attain, like in its highest form, but I don't think the limitations outweigh the pros, to be quite honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle Del Rosario, I will unmute you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to go back to what Eileen said and one to say that I am really disturbed with the fact that the police was discouraging her from mediating a noise violation herself. So in that sense, going back to what you said in your summary of what you guys took away from the listening session.
Danielle, I'm sorry, if you can just maybe try to adjust the mic. Sounds a little muffled.
Maybe is that better?
Oh, that's great. Perfect. Thank you.
It's probably my hair. You said earlier, Joel said that you got in contact with law enforcement after the listening session. And I just wanted to know, well, first I wanted to say in your further conversations, I would really like it to be expressed that they don't discourage people from mediating their own noise violations. I know it can seem inconvenient to put on your clothes on at night, but remember
you are saving lives when you are not calling the police when you're not calling the police unnecessarily. Lives are being saved, and even if lives aren't being saved, being confronted by the police can be extremely traumatic in and of itself without any physical brutality. So I just like people to keep that in mind when they're calling the police. Back to my question, what
Was the law enforcement's reception to what they heard? Did they take it seriously? One thing that has been really on my mind is there have been so many incidents of racial bias and discrimination that there's no way that they didn't know that any of these occurred. So how do they address that? What are just general responses from them would be helpful. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I had a really hard time hearing that. Was there a question in there for me?
Yeah. Just what did the law enforcement say in response to the listening session? Because it's very hard for me to believe that they had no idea that these incidences of racial discrimination were going on.
Okay, thank you. I heard that. So when we said early in our introductory program that we reached out to law enforcement, we didn't have them watch the listening session. So I can't answer that question, what they would have thought about it. What we were trying to find out was information about this issue of under what circumstances could they enter your home, right? So that was asked a number of times at the listening session. And we got some answers and we put them in that information packet that I sent out a couple weeks ago. As far as the issues you raise about to what degree would the police be aware of, racial profiling, et cetera, like I think that is exactly the kind of thing that we need to bring to our, engagement with the Police Modernization Collaborative and speak up. If you've read the governor has put out this 130-page document, Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative Resources and Guide for Public Officials and Citizens. And this was linked in one of the emails that I sent out, and everyone should read it before we go participate in this, because it's about the community articulating to law enforcement what its goals and standards are. And as we said early on, we have standards that no one in this village be treated differently or unprofessionally or worse by law enforcement for any reason of their identity.
Okay. I have two people with their hands raised. So first I'll call on Ken McCarthy and then I have Les Levesque. So Ken, I'm unmuting you now.
Yep, it's all right.
Just quickly to answer that question, also raise my own question. The commanders, it's a command control thing. They've got bosses, and they're accountable to those bosses, and the commanders may not know all the details of what goes on in the field, because I'm sure it's not all the police involved, and so that's why this reporting mechanism is so important. So that's my suggested answer to that. Just to throw out this idea, the problem occurs starting at 10. It's not a 24-hour-a-day problem. Obviously, the problem is a 10 o'clock to, let's say, midnight problem. There can be additional problems later, but it's sort of a limited time. Some villages and towns have constables. I know it's a pain and I know it's an expense, but it's just a possible way to deal with this problem so that you have a buffer, because it's a waste of police resources to come and deal with noisy parties. I mean, they should be doing much more serious things. And if there were a trained person, it's a job for somebody, and for the right person, it might be a very good thing. And, they've got 10 hours a week, maybe, Tuesday through Saturday night, and you have this buffer so that you have somebody that's trained in this. They're not a police officer. They're not armed. they're just somebody knocking on the door saying, time's up. And if they get a hassle, then the police may need to come on behalf of the community, because we are entitled to peace and quiet after 10 o'clock. That's a suggestion. The constable system would be a hybrid, because we'd have police services, but we'd also have our own constable to deal at a specific time with this specific problem. That's it.
Ken.
Les Levesque, I'm going to unmute you.
Hi. I think what Ken suggested is a really good idea. I think the problem with policing and people of color in this community is long-standing. It's, I've been coming here since '99, and I've been hearing stories of abuse for a long time. I think as for the community coalition, I'm wondering, I think building a community-based structure is fantastic. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think the issues about it being top-down and not building real coalition are valid. And I'm wondering, do any of the police live in our community? I think this is a huge issue. How can it be a community-based coalition if we're bringing in people from outside the community to police us? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Karen, I'm going to unmute you.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First of all, you need to know that I've probably lived here most of my life, and I've seen Tivoli at its worst and its best times. And there are definite reasons why those noise ordinances changed over those years, because Bard students were really not a part of our community probably till the 70s. And they started moving in slowly and a few at a time. And we got to know who they were, and they got to know us. It was more of a community. But over the years, we have probably a fifth of our population are Bard students. But I don't want to look at them as Bard students. I'd rather look at them as young adults. They're young adults who choose to live in the village because they must want to be a part of a community. And if they're not living on a campus, then they truly are part of our community. And there has to be a mutual respect from students and residents in Tivoli. I agree with Ken that the problems probably with noise start around 10 o'clock at night or after 10 o'clock. And this year is unusual because of COVID, but previous to this year, I would say that Bard has probably created a lot of the problems of noise after 10 because they double bus students to Tivoli on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights. And from 10 o'clock on, we absorb 200 more students that don't live here. So our noise problems have become extremely large after 10 o'clock at night on those nights. But with COVID, the Track Haven is closed most of the time and not open as late until 4 in the morning. And those problems right now have subsided. And I believe that the village probably hasn't hired law enforcement officers to come to the village during this COVID time because they haven't been necessary. We have speeders in town, and I'm sure that there are other issues that they need to be called for. My problem is when I wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and there's a party across the street from me with about 80 kids or more, I'm not going over there and ask them to turn the music down. If they've been drinking or doing drugs, I don't feel safe going there. And I'm going to respond to somebody who is a volunteer and ask them if they would go do that. I think it's this person who is creating the problem really needs to be more responsible for their actions and realize that Tivoli does have a noise ordinance. So that's where I'm ending it right now.
Thank you, Karen.
I don't currently see, oh, a hand. All right, Ken McCarthy, I'll unmute you.
Here I am again. Yeah, I'm glad Karen made a really important point, and I've talked about this with other people. Why doesn't BARD make opportunities available on campus for students to do what students do? And why should we bear the brunt of it? The 10 o'clock's, a reasonable time to stop. And obviously, why should Karen have to put on her clothes, cross the street, wade into a party of 100 people or 80 people or 50 people who are maybe a little bit, over the edge, and have a conversation with us? That's an unreasonable thing to ask. So I don't know what pressure we can put on BARD to do. They kind of collect a fair amount of tuition over there, and I'm trying to understand why they can't provide partying opportunities for the students on campus. So that's independent of our village issue, but we're entitled to raise that question. And the double buses, those buses are pretty weird. Buses that size, dumping off hundreds of people, it's a little strange. Because again, going back to something I said earlier, we are not a college town. We are a village, and some students live here. And we love the students. I mean, I hope if any students are watching this later, we love you. The town would be boring without you. We miss you when you leave in the summer and when you go away in the winter. We really do. But this, it's a community here. And again, we're supposed to be careful. It's not, we call it the students. It's a select group of students that are doing this. It is not all the BARD students that live in town. It's certainly not all young people that live in the town. It's very particular group. So we have to be careful with our language. We don't want to get into this collective punishment thing,
Okay.
I don't currently see any hands raised. I'll give a moment if anyone has any further comments or questions about the Community Coalition. Oh, hands came up. All right. Danny Sloninsky, I'm going to unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's Sarah again. I don't know. I kind of want to address the point you just made, Ken. I think that is super valid and understandable. But at the same time, BARD students do live here. I feel like everyone has been 20 years old, that obviously at some point in their lives and understands what the experience is like, and which is why I think the coalition could be so beneficial for everyone involved. Because people that may not necessarily feel comfortable going up to a party and busting it can simply call a group and of people that are in the same age range, and yeah, it can be done for them.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Danielle Ryu, I'm going to unmute you.
I just want to echo Sarah's point. I think no matter what form this takes, I think what I'm hearing over and over, and I think a lot of us are hearing, is there's a real desire to limit the extent, we want to limit the number of encounters that potentially put people in danger. We do that by not, like, there's a, like, people who want to call the police on other people are maybe a certain kind of person. I don't know if, education will necessarily fix that part of, like the cohort of people who are going to do that. But I do think I'm certainly invested in spending some time with other members of the community, thinking about how you change the culture and redirect it away from just picking up the phone and calling the police and saying, here are some other possibilities, right? So maybe that does look like, yeah, if you feel comfortable going over neighbor to neighbor, right, encouraging the exchange of phone numbers among neighbors, fine. But maybe there's also like another way where, or in addition to that, there could be, a handful of people who actually don't feel uncomfortable about ringing or knocking on a door. I mean, I don't have a problem with doing that, frankly. And I think to the point about threat, or to the point about safety, I don't want to make a presumption about, I don't know, like, I actually just don't think that it's very likely that my life would be endangered if I was on like the noise watch on a Friday night between 10 and 12, and I just went over and I was like, okay, you know, turn the music down. I don't know. I don't feel like I maybe other people feel differently, but I don't particularly feel like I would be endangered in that kind of situation, which is why I feel pretty comfortable with volunteering to help think through what that could look like. So anyway, but that said, I think we're all in agreement that we want to try to kind of curtail this, you know, the number of encounters, and also especially, you know, as Danielle said earlier, just because just having a police presence in the town causes issues or stresses people out just without any kind of physical encounter or any kind of physical threat. Just their presence is very stressful, and I think we need to acknowledge that and try to take that seriously too. Thank you.
Larry Cox, I'll unmute you.
Yeah, I just want to make again, I want to express appreciation for this conversation. I think in spirit I'm with Danielle, but I think there are real, you know, things that have to be thought through on how to do that in a way that's safe and responsible. But all I wanted to add was the thought that the intervention shouldn't start after 10 o'clock if you really want to try to solve this problem. It's a little late. You have to begin to, and I hope this is what what's called the coalition will do. You have to begin to try to develop relationships with younger people and older people and neighbors, getting together before 10 o'clock, saying, look, we really want to work together. We don't want to call the police on you. We want to like work this out among ourselves. You know, I don't know if there's any thought about, you know, how to do block parties or whatever, street parties or whatever, to bring our conversations to bring people together, or whether that's something the coalition should be thinking about. But I really think we need to, you know, my own experience is that when we go across the street and give to the students, you know, some extra pizza that we had and hand it to them and say, hey, we're your neighbors, or I like the poster that you had, and I heard that the other neighbors made you take it down, but I want you to know I'm not with those neighbors. I liked it. And if you have problems, you know, we're available to help you. And so at that point, when you go over to see them, they know you. And it's not like you're some authority figure coming, it's your neighbor. So it's a very obvious point. But I just hope the coalition will spend time trying to think about how to build those kind of relationships, so that, again, people don't feel the need to pick up the phone and call the police, or play the role of the police themselves when they're not trained to do that.
Thank you. So let's see, I have Aaron Kanan, and then I'm going to call on Sean Fisher. So first, Aaron, I'll unmute you.
And Bailey, just wanted to just say, you know, we can go at this point, you know, kind of open it up, whether you want to talk about the you know, any other three examples that the mayor and the trustees spoke about. So we'll, you know, be able to jump around if people like.
All right, go ahead, Erin.
Hi, sorry. My name is Erin Kanan, and I'm the Vice President for Student Affairs and the Dean for Civic Engagement at Bart. So I can kind of represent two aspects of campus life. We don't, just a clarification, the bus actually ends before midnight, and the second bus is bringing students who live in Tivoli back to their home in Tivoli. They actually have to show ID. And so it's like a safe bus. And as many of you know who've lived here for a long time, we have had students who have been killed. And so in a drunk driving accident. So we have to balance these safety issues. So then I'm going to go to my civic engagement hat and say that, you know, something like a Tivoli Community Coalition that includes stakeholders from the institution, so we can really discuss all of the different aspects of what each of us has to bear in mind as we're making the various decisions that we have to make. I think that does help eliminate the kind of broad strokes that some communities might make about institutions or governments or different aspects of our community. And so that's why I think these kinds of discussions are so important. The only thing I would add in addition to the coalition is that a mediation aspect, a way to actually resolve conflict, because there is going to be conflict. That's just going to be the nature of things. And how to, if we're at the table together already in conversation about our aspirations of where we want to go and our goals, then it will make sort of the discussions around when there are conflicts or things are difficult to sort of mediate, it would be easier for us to get there. In terms of community relations, I really want to give a nod here to Emily, because she's worked really closely with a lot of fellows from the Center for Civic Engagement to create that community. There's actually a student on who's part of that team, where there were potlucks that we hosted very regularly, where we were really trying to bring all aspects of the Tivoli community together. And unfortunately, through COVID, it makes that very difficult to do. But certainly we have student volunteers in the Tivoli Library. We have lots of students who are involved in lots of engagement activities around the community. And so highlighting and emphasizing those aspects of the way that what we benefit from in terms of having so many people committed to participating in the community and bringing that up as well. I think that there's aspects there that can be raised. And certainly the institution is more than willing to, and we have been at the table and will continue to be in order to take our responsibilities. And I can discuss with anybody who wants to talk about what it's like to be sort of regulated in New York State and age, what we're allowed to do as an institution and what kind of environment we're allowed to create with the drinking age and things like that. So I'm happy to continue that discussion, but I think there's a few things with the Community Coalition that could be expanded to incorporate other aspects of a sort of ongoing communication that could benefit the coalition.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, Sean Fisher, I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just thinking about the noise issues that are being raised, and we've run into them in our home. And short of somewhere between calling the police and going over in my bathrobe, I'm sure we can come to some kind of sensible way of finding a middle ground there. And I'm just wondering about having some kind of a phone bank of all of the landlords that are in Tivoli. Because if we rented our house to people, students or anyone, and there was a noise complaint, the landlord would be responsible for contacting the tenants and letting them know, we're in violation here, and I'm subject to a fine because of the irresponsibility or the level of noise in the house. Can you bring it down? So, maybe a phone call would really suffice when actually showing up in person, might present some kind of danger to the person actually knocking on the door. So that, I just wonder if that's been considered. That's it.
Thank you. Mayor, trustees, any comments?
I don't have any comments just yet.
Okay.
All right, Eileen, I'm going to, Emily, let me, oh, nope. People are raising them and dropping them. All right, Eileen, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Is good? Okay, so I just want to back up what Sean just said. So I've been here a long time. The house across from me is a rental to Bart students for probably the last, 10, 12 years. I'd have to look up the date and the tax rolls. But she brings a good point up. Many years, I actually, the students would introduce themselves. We actually exchanged cell numbers. In some cases, actually at the parent cell numbers. And so that is a great idea, but it's like, it really gets down to, and I'm going to pick on Danielle and the one other woman who spoke, who has, connections to the Bart community. If you can let the students know, we want to have a good time, all of us here, and live in peace. And, you know, if you reach out to your neighbors as well, like this, because of COVID, we had the captains. I handed out my name, address, cell number to everybody on the street, to the rentals. There's 5 rentals on the street, 2 are student housing and 3 are not. Everybody got the same information, but I didn't get anything back, right? So it's not like I have a number for one of those 4 students, right? So when something happens, you know, like Sean said, barring going over in the bathrobe or calling the cops, which I really don't want to do. I just really want to go to bed and sleep till the alarm goes off, and then sleep a little bit longer, and then I finally have to get up. That's really what I want. And, you know, I think it's possible to get that and everybody do okay with it, right? Like, and I'll use the example of the garbage cans. They used to be left in the road by lots of people then, but now they're not. I don't see the garbage cans in the road. So whatever happened there, like get your garbage can in within 24 hours or something, everybody seems to be following it. It's working great, right? It's especially great when the plow guy comes. So I think this is a manageable problem. But just let, you know, them know that they can reach out to their neighbors, right? You know, it goes both ways. And I think everybody wants it to work. That's it.
Thank you. Ken McCarthy, I'm unmuting you.
About the landlord issue, unfortunately, not all landlords are local. And we definitely have slumlords in this town who don't give a flying, you know what. They just don't care. We had one in our neighborhood. And I don't know what you do. I just want to throw that out there. If it was all local landlords, at least we could knock on their door. But some of these guys are in other countries. You hearing me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The other thing is, last time a student, and I believe it was the same young lady who was followed home by police, which I think is what horrified so many of us to hear that story. I think it was the same young lady. It might have been a different one. But she made this point, which is, all these committees are great, and I'm all for it. And it's great that the village is working to make this available. But she made the point, why do I have to join a committee just not to be hassled by cops? All right. And we could say the same thing for, and I'm not saying anything bad about the idea of initiatives, okay, please. But it is a fundamental question. Why should she have to join a committee not to be hassled? And for residents, or longer term residents, older residents who like to get to bed before midnight and sleep and through the alarm clock, why should we have to join a committee to be able to sleep through the night? So I'm all for the committees, but I'm also all for a law. And I'm also for some kind of objective mechanism that will work even if we don't have natural cooperation among certain people. Because there will be scofflaws we see it among landlords, we might have it among certain residents who decide they're just going to party, whatever. It may not be physically dangerous to go over and knock on the door of a loud party with a bunch of drunken young people, but it's not a comfortable thing to do for most people, and most people should not be put in the position of having to do that. And I understand get to be friends before, and that will work many times. It will not work all the time, and I know somebody who could tell you stories about the great effort she's made to make friends in daylight and not been treated well, under certain circumstances. And this is a very nice person. I can't imagine her being difficult. So anyway, it's great to have committees. It's great to have these governmental structures, but it's also be great to just, for the students who feel they're being harassed, not to have to join a committee, just not to be harassed, and for residents that want to sleep, to be able to sleep without having to join a committee just for that.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay.
All right, next I have Susan. Go ahead.
I just have been observing sort of different ways of approaching this, and it is important, I think, to try not to think of each other as the other, but to think of us as common Tivolians. We actually are a representative democracy. If you are a villager, you have every right to come to the board, to come to the meetings, to speak to people, to stop me in the post office and rant about the speeding on Broadway or whatever issue that you have. And I will take that on as something to try to deal with as a representative of the village. I am not an older person. I am not a Bard student. I am not a former professional. I am a village board member representing the interests of all of the people in Tivoli. And I think if we think of it that way, we won't need to bring in a Bard representative. They're not a member of they're not what this village is about. We are villagers, and we need to talk to each other and understand each other, be considerate of each other, and protect each other.
Deputy Mayor, did you have a comment?
I guess so. I mean, I have lots of comments all the time. I feel like, yeah, this isn't sort of a binary situation of like us and them, and I don't necessarily think it's a mediated coalition that we need, because there's so much overlap between Bart and Tivoli, right? Like, I mean, Joel and I are both alums, and there are so many professors and alums and current students, and going back through the years. But I think that the thing to do is to start with what we have in common, which is that we are all Tivolians, right? And everybody that comes to Tivoli loves Tivoli. Nobody leaves going, "Oh man, that was awful. I hated it." Right? So if we're starting from that point, then we can have conversations. And we're lucky to be such a small, contained space, although sometimes it can be a little claustrophobic. But because you can't be a jerk in a community this small, right? Because you have to make eye contact with your neighbors all the time, right? COVID makes this so hard because we can't have our potlucks and we can't just, hang out in a group on the porch of the bakery or, anywhere in the same way, right? Like there's not that kind of intimacy that this village fosters. And so, I think we're seeing each other's masks and not seeing each other's smiles, and that's hard. I probably had a point lost in there somewhere, but like we have this place in common, and like starting from there, like let's start talking and welcoming new members of the community, whether it's new long-time permanent residents, weekend residents, student residents. That's really important, right? And I found out firsthand that like you can make a difference in a community like this, right? Like if you stick with it, you can get involved and like your voice can be heard. And I wondered for years why the steps of the village hall were falling apart. And then I got on the board and I said to Joel, "Hey man, why are the steps of the village hall falling apart?" And he's like, "Why don't you get some bids and get them fixed?" Right? And like got some bids and got them fixed, and it felt really good. And it made me feel more invested in the community. And so I guess what I'm saying is like, let's talk more safely and socially distant and be really involved with one another, because this is what we got.
Thank you. I have 3 people with their hands raised. So I have Cynthia, followed by Danny, which I recall is Sarah, and then Karen. So Cynthia, I'm going to call on you next.
Yes, hello. I live next to the Bard house.
across from my name. And I've been living in Tivoli for almost 15 years now. And I have everyone has a valid point, and it's been very interesting to listen to everyone. And I guess I'm processing everything everyone's saying, because there are several things that come to my mind that I'm concerned with. And one of them being that when I first moved to Tivoli, I remember they had a pamphlet that they handed to us, left it in the mailbox, explaining all the rules and, just the laws and the things that, that happen in Tivoli. And one of them happened to be noise ordinances and garbage pickup and so on and so forth. So, we read through the whole thing and we understood that by 10 o'clock, things had to shut down. Long story short, I'm just concerned that I understand that the Bard students are young and, they have so much energy, and I get that because I was that age. But once I feel that once you decide, again, you decide to make a move into a small town like Tivoli, and there are all these rules and regulations, then I'm not sure where it becomes a problem for them to abide by them, in the sense that, you're a young adult now, you have sense of responsibilities. So I want them to understand that I think most of us understand that they're young, but at the same time, when my girls were young, they were babies, they would be woken up at night. My husband leaves early to work, he couldn't sleep. So there are certain things that you really have to take into account when you make the decision to move into a small town like Tivoli, and where you have these ordinances. The other thing that I also struggle with is, now my daughters are teenagers, they have this enormous amount of energy, where should they, what's available to that age group in this small town? Unfortunately, not much. Same goes for the young adults that decide to move here. So as far as Bard is concerned, how can the Bard students find that safe haven where if they want to have a party, if they want to hear music, if they want to drink, if they want to hang out with their kids, why can't Bard have that for them, so that they can feel safe? So that rather than the bus picking them up and returning them home, I'm sorry, I don't know how that went, but having the bus pick them up from Bard and bring them home here, where there isn't the issues with the noise ordinances and things like that. So just seeing things from both perspectives and trying to, why shouldn't they have a safe haven to enjoy themselves? So how can we help them with that? And as a part of the coalition, coming up with ways to help. Potlucks are great, but it doesn't speak to that energy you get when you're 20 something, when it hits 10 o'clock and you start getting dressed to go out. So, whereas I'm 48 now and I can't even think about doing something like that. But at that age, that's how it was for them. So just thinking about those things where we can help them understand that they have made a decision to be a part of our community and there's a noise ordinance, but also helping to understanding that they're young and they need to have that energy. I can't think of the word right now, but just have that energy, be a part of something more than just going home, studying, having an outlet for that kind of energy. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. And I do want to just know, the noise ordinance, I think, in the listening session was presented in many different ways, in terms of, whether the fairness, the unfairness, the issues with it, within neighbors, with law enforcement, with, a couple of different things. So I just wanted to make that very clear that, again, it was presented in so many different ways. And as the mayor and the board and the community kind of figures out ways to tackle this, there's all those different ways they have to think about it as well. It's not, one slice and let's figure it out and this is how we're going to deal with it, but more, kind of a general basis. So just wanted to put that out there. And for those who haven't seen the listening session, it is available, and you can go back and watch it as well. So just wanted to put that out there. Bailey?
Okay, so I have Sarah, that's on Danny's account. Sarah, I'll unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Sarah's friend, actually. I'm Lily.
Oh,
But I just wanted to, sorry. I just wanted to touch on the point that I forget who, someone was talking about how we all sort of other each other. And especially as I'm a senior at Bard this year. I've been visiting Tivoli since my freshman year. And I think definitely a common sentiment is that we feel very unwanted. I'm sure and I believe that there are many people in Tivoli who are residents who do genuinely appreciate us, but I think something that goes unrecognized is a large part of the workforce. We contribute a lot to local economy, and I feel like just the acknowledgement isn't really there on that part. And touching on the earlier point of shuttles and stuff and why not go to campus for late night activities, the shuttle to Tivoli, if you live in Tivoli, you go to campus to go hang out with your friends, there's often no way to get back because the shuttle ends. I mean, at 11:50 or something like that. And while that may seem late, I mean, I often like to be in bed before that, but it makes it very difficult to leave Tivoli and be able to come back. And it also makes it very dangerous. People have been killed walking on 9G. The shuttle isn't very accommodating for that.
They're cutting out a little bit.
Yes, we chose to live in Tivoli, amount of money. Is it better? Maybe?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that the only other option really is Red Hook, which is not safe for a lot of Bard students. There's a lot of bigotry, there's a lot of racism. So Tivoli is sort of the only other destination. And I think it's important just to keep in mind that there are other sort of factors in this than, we want to, party and stuff. This is the place where we feel safest. And even then, it's not that safe for us. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Karen and then Les Levesque. So Karen, I will unmute you.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I didn't know I was on. First of all, I want to thank Joel and the village board because I think that they're willing to work on and have worked very diligently to resolve some of these issues over years with what was going on. And I think that when it comes to living in Tivoli, I've lived here over 60 years and I have never felt unsafe one single day out of all those years. I am really saddened to hear that some of the problems that other students have gone through with the police department, but I have never seen anything like that happen, and I'm glad I haven't. And I'm hoping that maybe now that it's been called to people's attentions that we can act on that. As far as students go, I am surrounded by students. I have no families near me. And I've made friends with my neighbors as I have every year. I have the landlord's phone number, but she doesn't live in town. And all the places around me that are rented out by Bard students have landlords that don't live in town. So that is an issue, but when things do happen, I do talk to the landlord about their tenant directly with them to let them know that there's been a problem. But I think that maybe this coalition is the way to go. I think it's a great idea. I'm hoping it gets off the ground and something can be done. But I think the bottom line is we are all Tivolians. We do live here. We're all residents. And I think it's so important that students who are choose to live in Tivoli need to be part of the community. And they are. Many work here. Many have volunteering jobs, which has been stated. And I think that's wonderful. But we have a focus of being a community and respect for each other. And if you're a junior or a senior and you choose to live in Tivoli, you also have to choose to abide by our rules too, and be a really a caring and responsible citizen along with all of us. So we hear you. I enjoy having the students. I like having the young youth in town. I also like to see little kids in town. I mean, we are quite a diverse community, and I'm hoping that it remains that way on a harmonious note. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. So just to reiterate, if anyone has any general questions or comments on any portion of the proposals you've heard this evening, this is the time to do them. We're almost out of time, so I just wanted to make that announcement once more. Les Levesque, I'll go ahead and unmute you now.
Hi, this is Daniela Dooling again. So there are a couple of points that I'd like to come back to, and I appreciate everything that people have said tonight, but one thing that seems to be getting a little lost in the conversation, I think at least, is that back to the listening session that happened over the summer, was that a disproportionate amount of the bad incidents with police were directed towards not only students, but visiting artists and visiting faculty or regular faculty that were people of color. And so I want to bring it back to the fact that for those of us who are white, we may not have the same kinds of experiences with police that our friends of color are having. And so that is one thing that I would really like to bring back into this conversation. While Tivoli may seem safe compared to Red Hook, it could be safer, it could be better, it could be more welcoming for a more diverse community. And I also want to reiterate that I also love it when students are here and it feels kind of empty and not as rich a place when students are not here in the summertime or during winter break. The other thing that I would like to bring back to is the idea that Les mentioned, and that was, are there any members of the police force that live in Tivoli? Do we have police members that are actually a part of our community? And if so, I think though the police that, if they do, there must be some police that live in Tivoli, maybe not, but if they are living in the community, then I think that they should be part of this conversation and they should actually listen to the listening session. I think that they should have access to that. And last point, I really do like this idea of the constable as someone that we could perhaps hire from the, say, 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock in the morning time. I think that that's something that we talked about at the listening session, and I'd like to bring it back to that. But I do just want to make sure that everyone remembers that, if you are white, and no matter if you're a student or if you're an older member of the community, you're not as likely to be targeted by the cops or harassed by the cops. And often those kinds of harassment that we were hearing, and a lot of us have heard for years, don't have anything to do with the noise ordinance. They have to do with people walking down the street or just being stopped because of the color of their skin. And so that is something I'd really like to bring us back to, that is a big part of what that conversation was during the listening session. And I hope we don't lose sight of that very important fact. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we have time for one last comment. I have Cynthia with her hand raised. She's the last person I have with their hand raised at this moment. So we'll take this one last comment or question. Cynthia, I will unmute you now. Go ahead.
So I just have a question. So the paperwork for the cops. So does the incident have to occur in Tivoli, or could it occur in, let's say, Red Hook, and the incident occurred and there was a person that lives in Tivoli? Is there some kind of restriction as far as the locations of these incidences?
If I can answer that quickly, I mean, that's a fabulous question. Again, that's not something we've answered. My quick thought is our concept was that this is for incidents that occurred within the village. However, anyone who's a citizen of this village who I serve, and you have a problem that happened to you in Texas, you can come to me. I'll do what I can, but
Yeah, because
not to be flippant and curt with your
absolutely
with your question,
because
but
I actually know of an incident that occurred yesterday, and this person is terrified of coming forward, but I think it's important that they do. So I will. They're not at this meeting, but they are Tivoli residents.
Yeah.
So I have to see if I can reach out to them and let them know
I just want
that this is
to
happening.
add on that note, Tivoli is not an island, though sometimes it feels that way. And we are embedded in the town of Red Hook and in the county of Dutchess. And that's another reason why participating in this county-wide effort about police reform and modernization is so important, particularly for our community. We don't have a police department to overhaul.
No.
Or, like we're stuck with hiring whoever is around here for those, rare and unfortunate things that sometimes we need police for. So I really do hope people will participate in, Freddie's got the slide up there. This is so important. And, but I really appreciate that question as we think about creating that forum and how it would function. So thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you, everyone. So we are now at the end of our time for the forum. I want to thank everybody. Before we say goodnight, though, I want to give a few quick reminders. So if there are any further comments or questions regarding the proposals presented this evening, please email the Tivoli mayor. His email address is on the screen there, mayor@tivoliny.org. Further contact information for both the mayor and the entire board of trustees can be found at the village website, tivoliny.org. Again, a reminder of the county police reform community forums. So just to clarify, anyone can attend and speak at any session. The sessions have been organized by specific geographic areas to try to assure that everyone has a chance to be heard. So if you are, you live, you work, you're a part of those communities, you get priority for speaking according to that region. But if that date doesn't work for you, you can select the date that does work for you and register for that date. The priority date for Tivoli is Saturday, September 26th from 3 to 5 p.m. Registration is required and details can be found. The address is dutchessny.gov/police reform. dutchessny.gov/police reform. And if you have any questions on that forum, you can contact the commission at dchumanrights@dutchessny.gov. Thank you again to everyone for your participation this evening. It is nearly 9 o'clock on a Thursday evening. So thank you for being here and sharing your feedback with the board. Stay tuned for further developments. The board wanted me to communicate to you that this is the next step. There was the listening session. This is the next step. There will be further steps. So please stay tuned for those updates. Again, reach out to them with feedback or further comments. They're going to take this feedback into consideration and we'll take the next steps from here. So wishing everybody a pleasant night. Good evening. Thank you.